My name is Ava, and I'm 34 years old. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the most unexpected revelations. 2 weeks ago, I discovered my sister had emptied every single account I owned and vanished with her boyfriend. $93,000 gone overnight. But what happened next still takes my breath away. My 9-year-old daughter, Emma, looked at me with those determined eyes and said something I'll never forget. Before I share what my daughter did, tell me where you're watching from. If you've ever been betrayed by family, please like and subscribe to hear how a 9-year-old taught me the ultimate lesson about justice. Growing up in a small town outside Philadelphia, Jessica and I were inseparable. She was 3 years younger with wild curly hair that never stayed in place and a laugh that could light up any room. I still remember the day she was born, how tiny her fingers looked wrapped around mine. Our parents used to joke that I acted more like a second mother than a big sister, always making sure she ate her vegetables, helping with homework, standing up to the 5th-grade bully who made fun of her braces. Our childhood was filled with shared secrets and pinky promises. Every Saturday morning we'd wake up early to watch cartoons while our parents slept in, sharing a big bowl of cereal between us. I taught her how to ride a bike in our backyard, running beside her for hours until she finally got the hang of it. When she fell and scraped her knee, I carried her all the way home on my back, even though my legs were shaking from exhaustion. School was where our differences showed most. I was the quiet one, always with my nose in a book, getting straight A's without really trying. Jessica struggled with reading but excelled at making friends. She had this natural charisma that drew people to her. Teachers loved her enthusiasm even when her grades weren't perfect. I spent countless evenings at our kitchen table, helping her with multiplication tables and book reports, celebrating every small victory like it was a major achievement. Then came the accident that changed everything. I was 22, home from college for Thanksgiving break. Jessica was 19 in her freshman year at community college. Our parents had gone out for their anniversary dinner, something they rarely did. The police officer who came to our door at 2 a.m. had kind eyes, but his words shattered our world. A drunk driver had crossed the median on Route 476. They died instantly, he said, like that was supposed to be comforting. The funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and casseroles from neighbors. Everyone kept asking what we were going to do, 2 young women alone in the world. I made the decision that night, holding Jessica as she sobbed herself to sleep. I withdrew from university, gave up my scholarship, my dreams of becoming a pediatrician. Jessica needed stability, needed to finish her education. I could go back to school later, I told myself. 3 jobs became my new normal. Morning shifts at the Golden Diner where the smell of bacon grease clung to my clothes. Afternoon deliveries for a local florist, racing around town with arrangements for birthdays and funerals. Evening cleaning at a law office downtown, vacuuming empty conference rooms while lawyers worked late on cases. Every paycheck went toward keeping our childhood home, paying Jessica's tuition, making sure she had textbooks and a meal plan. Jessica thrived at college once she found her footing. She majored in communications, joined the drama club, made Dean's List junior year. I sat in the front row at her graduation, tears streaming down my face as she walked across that stage. She hugged me afterward, diploma in hand, and whispered that she could never repay what I'd sacrificed. I told her seeing her succeed was payment enough. Life started looking up after that. Jessica got a job at a marketing firm in the city. I met Marcus at the diner where I still worked weekend shifts. He was a contractor who came in every morning for coffee and eggs over easy. It took him 3 months to ask me out and another 6 before he proposed. Jessica was my maid of honor, gave a speech that had everyone crying and laughing. She called Marcus the brother she never had, thanked him for making me smile again. Emma arrived a year after the wedding, 7 pounds of perfect with Marcus's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. Jessica was there for the delivery, holding my hand through 23 hours of labor. She was the first person besides Marcus and me to hold Emma, and I swear my daughter smiled at her aunt right away. Jessica became Aunt Jessie, the fun aunt, who brought too many presents and taught Emma how to paint her nails at age 4. Our lives fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sunday dinners at our house. Jessica always bringing dessert from the fancy bakery near her apartment. Holiday traditions. We created ourselves mixing our parents' customs with new ones. Shopping trips where Jessica would spoil Emma rotten buying her dresses I'd never splurge on. Movie nights where the three of us would pile on the couch while Marcus worked late eating popcorn and watching Disney films until Emma fell asleep between us. 6 months ago, Jessica started dating Derek Coleman. She met him at a networking event, she said, all excited about this charming man who owned his own consulting business. He was handsome in that polished way, always in expensive suits, always ready with a compliment. The first time I met him, something felt off. Maybe it was how his smile never quite reached his eyes, or how he kept steering conversation toward money investments, asking about our savings like it was casual dinner talk. Marcus noticed it too. After they left that first dinner, he said Derek reminded him of a salesman who once tried to sell him fake lumber permits. But Jessica was glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before our parents died. She'd had bad luck with relationships guys who couldn't handle her success or wanted to dim her light. Derek seemed to worship her, at least in public. He called her his queen, brought her flowers every week, posted about her constantly on social media. I pushed down my doubts because Jessica deserved happiness. When she started spending every weekend at his place, I missed our sister time but understood. When she began skipping family dinners because Derek had made other plans, I told myself this was normal for new relationships. Even when Emma asked why Aunt Jessie never played with her anymore, I made excuses. Love makes people act differently, I said, though the words tasted bitter. The last time I saw Jessica before everything fell apart, she seemed nervous, kept checking her phone, jumping whenever it buzzed. Derek was there too, sitting too close, his hand always on her back like he was holding her in place. When I asked if everything was okay, she laughed too loud and said she'd never been better. But when she hugged me goodbye, she held on a second longer than usual, whispered that she loved me. I should have known something was wrong. I should have asked more questions. That Monday morning started like any other. Emma was dragging her feet about, getting ready for school, complaining that her favorite purple shirt was in the wash. Marcus had already left for an early job site meeting. I was making Emma's lunch peanut butter and honey sandwich with the crusts cut off, apple slices, and those little cheese crackers she loved. My phone was on the counter and I opened the banking app to transfer $20 to Emma's lunch account. The checking account showed $0. I blinked, refreshed the app. Still $0. That couldn't be right. We had $8,500 in there yesterday. I checked the savings account where we kept our emergency fund and Emma's college money. $0. $0. Every account completely empty. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I called the bank while Emma ate breakfast, trying to keep my voice calm. The customer service representative put me on hold 3 times, each wait feeling like hours. Finally, a manager came on the line. "Sir," he said, "these were authorized transfers." The person had all the correct information, passwords, security questions. They were processed at 3:47 a.m. through online banking and confirmed at our ATM on Market Street. My sister was the only other person who knew those passwords. I'd given them to her years ago when I was in the hospital having Emma in case something went wrong and Marcus needed access to pay bills. She'd never used them, never needed to. I felt sick as I asked the manager to check who had made the transfers. There was a long pause before he said he could see the ATM footage showed 2 individuals, a woman matching the authorized user's description, and a man. The school bus honked outside. Emma grabbed her backpack, kissed my cheek, asked if I was okay because I looked pale. I forced a smile, told her everything was fine, watched her skip down the driveway. The moment the bus turned the corner, I grabbed my keys and drove to Jessica's apartment building. My hands were sweating as I knocked on her door. No answer. I knocked harder, called her name. The neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Chen, poked her head out. "Honey, she moved out," Mrs. Chen said. Middle of the night, her and that boyfriend of hers made quite a racket loading up a rental truck. When I asked where Jessica was going, Mrs. Chen shrugged. The boyfriend kept laughing, saying something about hitting the jackpot, made a comment about his girlfriend's stupid sister finally paying them back. I didn't understand what he meant, But Jessica just stood there, didn't say a word to correct him. My legs gave out. Mrs. Chen caught me, helped me sit on the hallway floor. She brought me water, stayed with me while I called Marcus, called the police, called Jessica's phone, which went straight to a disconnected message. $93,000. Our entire life savings. Emma's college fund we'd been building since she was born. The emergency fund that took years to save. The money for the new roof our house desperately needed. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about trust shattered into pieces so small I couldn't imagine ever putting them back together. This was Jessica, my baby sister, the person I'd given up everything to protect. The one who held my hand through labor, who Emma called her favorite aunt, who knew every secret and scar of my life. How could she look at our security, our daughter's future, and decide to take it all? Marcus came home from work, held me while I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. The police took a report, but said since Jessica had authorized access, it was a civil matter unless we could prove coercion or fraud. The bank said the same thing. We'd have to sue to get anything back, and even then, if the money was already spent or hidden, we might never see it again. Emma found me crying in the bathroom that evening. She was supposed to be doing homework, but there she stood in her pajamas with the little unicorns on them, looking far too serious for a 9-year-old. She climbed into my lap, even though she was getting too big for it, wrapped her arms around my neck. I tried to explain in simple terms what had happened, that Aunt Jessica had taken something important, and we might not see her for a while. My daughter pulled back, looked me straight in the eye with an expression I'd never seen before. It was determination mixed with something else, something almost ancient in its wisdom. "Mom," she said, her voice steady and clear, "Aunt Jessica did something very bad. But don't worry, I know exactly what to do about it." Then she kissed my forehead like I used to do when she was hurt, and walked to her room with purpose in every step. I thought she was just trying to make me feel better the way kids do with impossible promises and magical thinking. But Emma grabbed her iPad from the kitchen counter and sat at the dining table, fingers flying across the screen. She pulled up a notebook app and started typing, occasionally asking me questions. "What's Aunt Jessica's middle name again? What year was Derek born? Do you remember the name of his company?" The next morning, Emma came to breakfast already dressed, her hair neatly braided, wearing her good jeans and the sweater my mother had knitted before she died. She looked like she was going to a job interview instead of 4th grade. When I asked why she was so dressed up, she said today was important and she needed to look professional. Before I could question that, she asked for Derek's full legal name. Derek James Coleman. I told her, confused. She wrote it carefully in her notebook, then asked for his birthday if I knew it. Jessica had mentioned it once, planning some elaborate surprise party that now seemed like another manipulation. June 15th, 1987. Emma nodded, wrote that down too, then asked something that made my blood run cold. "Mom, did Aunt Jessica ever mention where Derek lived before he came here?" The truth was, Derek had been vague about his past. Something about working in Chicago, then Denver, maybe sometime in Florida. Jessica had found his mystery romantic, said he was a man who lived in the present, not the past. Now that seemed less romantic and more calculated. I told Emma what little I knew, and she absorbed it all like a sponge, those dark eyes intense with concentration. At school pickup that afternoon, Emma was 30 minutes late coming out. When I started to get out of the car to look for her, she appeared with Mr. Harrison, her computer teacher. He was a tall black man in his 50s, a former Marine who ran the coding club Emma had joined that year. He walked her to the car, leaned down to my window with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Williams, Emma shared something troubling with me today," he said quietly. "About her aunt and a theft situation. I want you to know I've offered to help her with a special project that might assist your family. It's completely legal, just teaching her about digital footprints and public records. With your permission, I'd like to work with her after school for the next few days." I looked at Emma in the rearview mirror. She was sitting up straight, hands folded, waiting for my answer. Something told me to trust her, even though I had no idea what they were planning. I gave permission, and Emma smiled for the first time since I'd told her about the theft. Mr. Harrison handed me his business card with his military record and credentials listed. "Your daughter is exceptional," he said. "You should be proud." That evening, Emma spread papers across the dining table like a detective working a case. She had printed screenshots of social media profiles, Google search results, something that looked like court records from other states. When I asked where she got all this, she explained that Mr. Harrison taught her about public information, how everything people post online leaves traces, how court records and police reports are often publicly accessible. "Mom," she said, pointing to a printout, "Derek Coleman isn't his only name. Look, in Chicago, he was Derek Coleman. In Denver, he went by Derek James. In Florida, it was James Coleman. Same person, same birthday, just shuffling his names around." Mr. Harrison showed me how to cross-reference photos with reverse image search. This is definitely the same guy. My hands trembled as I looked at what my 9-year-old had discovered. 3 different states, 3 variations of his name, and in each place, newspaper articles about women who'd been scammed. Small mentions in crime logs about fraud investigations, a Derek Coleman wanted for questioning in Chicago, a James Coleman whose ex-girlfriend in Denver claimed he'd stolen $40,000 but couldn't prove it. Emma had more. She'd found Derek's real Facebook profile, not the sanitized one he'd shown Jessica. Posts from angry women, warnings to others. Photos of him with different girlfriends over the years. Always pretty, always successful looking, always alone in the world like Jessica. The pattern was clear as day, laid out by my 4th grader, like a roadmap of a con artist's career. The next few days fell into a strange routine. Emma went to school, stayed after with Mr. Harrison, came home with more information. She created a timeline on poster board, used different colored markers for each state Derek had operated in. She found 5 women total who'd publicly posted about being scammed by him, though she suspected there were more who stayed quiet out of embarrassment. Wednesday night, she asked to borrow my phone. Said she needed to make some calls for her project. I supervised as she dialed numbers she'd found for the women Derek had hurt before. Most didn't answer, but 2 did. Emma's voice was clear and mature as she introduced herself, explained that Derek had targeted her aunt, that we were trying to stop him. Both women cried on the phone, shared their stories, gave Emma contact information for the detectives who'd worked their cases. Thursday was when things escalated. Emma asked Mr. Harrison to take her to the police station after school. She walked in with her folder of evidence, asked to speak to someone in the cyber crimes unit. The desk sergeant almost laughed until Mr. Harrison, in his deep military voice, suggested they take the child seriously. Detective Morgan, a woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, spent an hour with Emma looking through everything she'd compiled. That evening, Detective Morgan called me directly. "Your daughter brought us information we've been trying to piece together for 3 years," she said. "Derek Coleman, or whatever he's calling himself, is wanted in multiple jurisdictions. We haven't been able to locate him because he's good at covering his tracks. But Emma found something we missed. She tracked his digital purchases, found a pattern. He always orders from the same coffee shop app, always uses the same loyalty card number across his aliases." Friday afternoon, Emma organized what she called a war council. She invited 3 classmates over, each chosen for specific reasons. Tommy's dad was a bank manager who understood financial fraud. Lisa's mom was a lawyer who knew about interstate crime. Miguel's parents owned a restaurant where Derek and Jessica had eaten just last week, might have security footage or credit card records. The kids sat around our dining table like a corporate board meeting. Emma had prepared a presentation on our laptop, complete with slides about fraud, identity theft, and interstate commerce laws. She'd assigned each friend a task. Tommy would ask his dad about flagging suspicious transfers. Lisa would find out about asset recovery. Miguel would get the security footage from his family's restaurant. By Saturday, Emma had compiled everything into a single document she called the Derek Coleman Files. 15 pages of evidence, witness statements, financial records, and a detailed timeline of his crimes across state lines. She asked me to proofread it, make sure she hadn't missed anything. At the bottom, she'd written a note to the FBI about interstate fraud and crossing state lines to avoid prosecution. Sunday morning, she was up before dawn, typing emails to every law enforcement contact she'd gathered. FBI Cybercrime Unit, state police in 3 states, local detectives working cold cases. She CC'd Detective Morgan on everything, created a shared folder with all the evidence. Each email was professionally written like something from a law firm, not a 4th grader. Mr. Harrison had taught her well. That evening, Emma sat beside me on the couch, finally looking like the child she was supposed to be. She leaned against my shoulder, iPad in her lap, refreshing her email every few minutes. "Mom," she said quietly, "do you think Aunt Jessica knows what Derek really is? Do you think she knows about the other women he hurt?" I didn't have an answer for that. Part of me wanted to believe Jessica was another victim manipulated by a professional con artist. Part of me couldn't forgive her for taking Emma's college fund, for calling me stupid to our neighbor. Emma must have sensed my conflict because she squeezed my hand and said something that broke my heart. "Even if Aunt Jessica comes back, things won't be the same, will they? But that's okay, Mom. Sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to believe them." Monday passed quietly. Emma went to school, came home, did her homework like nothing was happening. But I caught her checking her email, constantly jumping whenever my phone buzzed. Tuesday was the same, though she seemed more anxious, kept looking at the calendar on the wall. When I asked what she was waiting for, she just said, "Patience was important in operations like this." Wednesday night, day 8, since she'd started her investigation, Emma's email finally pinged with responses. The FBI had received her package and was coordinating with local law enforcement. Detective Morgan from Denver had connected with Detective Williams from Chicago. A task force was being assembled. They'd traced Derek's coffee app purchases to a motel 6 hours away, just across the state line. The same motel had a room registered to J. Williams, paid in cash. Emma looked at me with those serious eyes again. "Mom, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, you need to be by your phone. Aunt Jessica is going to call you, and she's going to be very upset. But remember, this isn't about punishment. It's about justice. And sometimes justice comes from unexpected places." Then she hugged me tight, went to bed without being asked, leaving me to wonder how my baby had become this fierce protector of our family. Thursday at 2 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, phone in front of me like a bomb about to explode. Emma sat across from me, calm as still water, doing her math homework like this was any ordinary afternoon. At 2:03, the phone rang. Jessica's name appeared on the screen, the first time I'd seen it in 9 days. My hand shook as I answered, putting it on speaker at Emma's gesture. Ava Jessica's voice was pure panic mixed with tears and terror. "What did you do? How did you find us?" "They're here. The police are everywhere. They're arresting Derek. Oh God, they're putting him in handcuffs. This is your fault. You couldn't just let me be happy for once." In the background, I could hear chaos. Derek's voice, usually so smooth and controlled, was high-pitched and angry. Male voices shouting commands. Car doors slamming. Radio chatter. The unmistakable sound of authority finally catching up with someone who'd been running for too long. I looked at Emma, who was watching me intently, and found my voice. "Jessica." I said, surprisingly steady. "I didn't do anything. The police have been looking for Derek for years. He's wanted in 3 states for fraud. He's stolen from at least 5 women before you, maybe more. You're not special to him. You're just the latest mark, and you helped him steal from your own family, from your 9-year-old niece's college fund." "That's not true," Jessica screamed. "Derek loves me. He said we deserved that money that you owed me for all those years. I had to watch you play perfect big sister, perfect mother, perfect wife. You got Marcus and Emma and the house and everything. I got nothing. Derek said it was only fair." The sound of her pain and rage filled my kitchen, but I felt oddly detached. Emma pushed a piece of paper across to me, one of the printouts about Derek's previous victims. "Jessica, listen to me. Derek told Sandra Morrison in Chicago the same thing about her sister. He told Jennifer Lou in Denver her family owed her. He tells every woman what she needs to hear to get access to money. You were played, Jess. We both were." There was a moment of silence except for the background noise. Then a male voice close to the phone. "Ma'am, this is Detective Richards with the state police. We need to take your sister in for questioning. We have evidence of her involvement in interstate fraud and identity theft. If she cooperates, things will go easier. The money from the accounts has been located and frozen. Most of it's still there. Jessica started sobbing ugly choking sounds that once would have made me run to comfort her. "You don't understand," she kept saying. "He promised me everything. He said we'd travel the world, that I'd never have to work again, that I'd finally be special to someone. He made me feel like I mattered. Do you know what it's like, Ava always being the broken one who needed saving?" Emma suddenly stood up, walked over, and took the phone from my hand. Her voice was clear and strong. "Aunt Jessica, this is Emma. You need to listen very carefully. Mr. Coleman has done this to 5 other women that we know about. Sarah in Chicago, he took $40,000. Jennifer in Denver, $60,000. Maria in Tampa, $35,000. Lindsay in Phoenix, $55,000. Rebecca in Memphis, $70,000. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. Each of those women thought they were special too. Each one believed his lies about their families owing them about deserving more. You're not stupid, Aunt Jessica. You're victim number 6. But you're also the one who helped him. You knew our passwords. You knew that money was for my college. You made a choice." Jessica's sobs got louder. "Emma, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He said we'd pay it back, that it was just borrowing, that your mom would never even notice because she had Marcus to take care of everything. He kept saying Ava had everything and I had nothing, and it wasn't fair, and I believed him because I wanted to believe him." My daughter's response was years beyond her age. "Wanting something to be true doesn't make it true, Aunt Jessica. Mr. Harrison taught me that feelings aren't facts. You felt left out, but Mom gave up college for you. You felt unloved, but we invited you to dinner every Sunday. You felt less than, but that was your feeling, not our doing. And you let those feelings turn you into someone who steals from family." The detective's voice returned. "We need to go now. Ma'am, you'll have a chance to call back later after processing. I suggest you get a lawyer. The federal charges are serious, but cooperation will help. Your niece here did exceptional work. You should be proud of her, even if you can't be proud of yourself right now." The line went dead. Emma carefully placed the phone on the table, then walked around to my chair and climbed into my lap like she used to when she was tiny. We sat there in silence for a long moment, her head on my shoulder, my arms around her small frame. I could feel her heartbeat, quick but steady, could smell the strawberry shampoo in her hair. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't want to hurt Aunt Jessica. I just wanted to stop her from hurting us more. And I wanted to stop Derek from hurting anyone else. Did I do the right thing?" "Was it okay to investigate like that?" Mr. Harrison said. "Sometimes children see solutions adults miss because we haven't learned to complicate things yet." I held her tighter, kissed the top of her head. "You did exactly the right thing, baby. You protected our family. You protected future victims, and honestly, you probably protected Jessica from even worse. If Derek had taken her further, if she'd gone deeper into crime with him, there might have been no coming back. You gave her a chance to stop before it got worse." Emma pulled back to look at me, and I saw tears in her eyes for the first time since this started. "I learned something important, Mom. Family isn't about blood or genes or who you're related to. Family is about who shows up, who protects you, who chooses to do right even when it's hard. Aunt Jessica is my blood, but she stopped being my family when she chose to hurt us. Is that okay to feel?" I thought about all the years I'd sacrificed for Jessica, all the opportunities I'd passed up to make sure she had what she needed. I thought about how she'd stood beside me at my wedding, held my hand during labor, been the aunt I'd wanted for Emma. But I also thought about her calling me stupid about her taking my daughter's future without a second thought about her choosing a con man's lies over a lifetime of love. Yes, I told Emma it's okay to feel that way. Love doesn't mean accepting harm. Family doesn't mean enabling bad choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable for their actions. You didn't destroy our family, sweetheart. You revealed a truth that was already there, and that takes incredible courage. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls. Detective Morgan called to officially thank Emma for her work, said she had a future in law enforcement if she wanted it. The FBI agent assigned to the case called to confirm they'd recovered most of the money, though some had already been spent on the motel rental truck and what appeared to be several $1,000s worth of designer clothing and jewelry that Jessica was wearing when arrested. Marcus came home early, having gotten my texts about what was happening. He scooped Emma up in a huge hug, called her his little detective, said he'd never been prouder. We ordered pizza for dinner, Emma's favorite, and tried to pretend everything was normal, even though we all knew it wasn't. The TV stayed off because we didn't want to see if the arrest made the news. That night after Emma was in bed, Marcus and I sat on our front porch processing everything. He held my hand as I cried, not for the sister I'd lost, but for the sister I'd thought I had. The illusion had been shattered so completely that I couldn't even remember what it felt like to trust her. Every memory was now tainted with wondering if she'd always resented me, always been capable of this betrayal. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. It was Jessica calling from the county jail. She'd been charged with conspiracy to commit interstate fraud, identity theft, and several other crimes I didn't fully understand. Her voice was small, defeated, nothing like the hysteria from earlier. She wanted me to bail her out. Said she had information about Derek that could help the case, but she needed to get out first. I told her no. It was the hardest no I'd ever said, but also the most necessary. She'd made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. She cried, begged, promised to pay everything back, swore she'd testify against Derek, said she'd do whatever it took to make things right. But I'd learned something from my 9-year-old daughter. Apologies without accountability are just manipulation in disguise. The next morning, Emma presented me with a final document she'd created. It was a victim impact statement written in her neat handwriting addressed to the court. She detailed not just the financial loss, but the emotional damage, the breach of trust, the fear it had created about our future. At the bottom, though, she'd written something that surprised me. She asked the court to consider rehabilitation for her aunt, to mandate therapy along with whatever sentence she received. Aunt Jessica is broken, Mom, Emma explained when I asked about it. Not broken like something wrong with her that excuses what she did, but broken like she doesn't know how to value real love over fake promises. Maybe if she gets help, she can learn. And maybe someday, way in the future, she can be the aunt I used to know. Not our family anymore, but maybe a person who learned from her mistakes. The next 3 months passed like a whirlwind and molasses at the same time. The legal system moved slowly but steadily. Derek was extradited to Illinois first, where the charges were most severe. Turns out, Emma's investigation had uncovered 2 more victims who came forward after news of his arrest spread on social media. 7 women, total over $300,000 stolen across 6 years. Jessica's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. She testified against Derek, providing evidence of how he'd coached her to access our accounts, how he'd isolated her from family before the theft, how he'd promised her a life of luxury if she just did this one thing. The recordings she'd secretly made of him planning their next targets helped convict him. She got 2 years probation and 300 hours of community service, specifically working with a nonprofit that helped fraud victims. The money came back slowly. First the $57,000 that hadn't been spent, then another $20,000 recovered from selling the jewelry and designer goods Derek had bought Jessica. The rental truck had been abandoned in Tennessee with another $15,000 in cash hidden in a duffel bag. By the time everything was settled, we recovered about $85,000 of the $93,000 taken. The rest was gone forever, spent on their brief life on the run. Emma became something of a local celebrity. The newspaper did a story about the 9-year-old detective who'd solved an interstate fraud case. Mr. Harrison was quoted saying she was the most naturally gifted investigator he'd ever met, child or adult. The school board approved a special advanced program for her, combining computer science with criminal justice studies, usually reserved for high schoolers. But fame wasn't what changed Emma. It was the letters. Once word got out about what she'd done, women started writing to her. Victims of similar scams, sisters who'd been betrayed, daughters who'd watched their mothers get conned. They thanked her for her bravery, shared their own stories, told her she'd inspired them to seek justice. Emma read every letter, responded to most, and started a blog about recognizing online fraud. 3 months after the arrest, I was doing laundry when I found a letter in Emma's backpack. It was from Jessica, postmarked from the halfway house where she was staying as part of her sentence. My first instinct was to tear it up, protect Emma from whatever manipulation might be inside. But this wasn't my choice to make anymore. Emma had earned the right to decide for herself. She read it at the kitchen table, face expressionless. When she finished, she handed it to me. Jessica had written 3 pages of apology, taking full responsibility for her choices. She admitted she'd always been jealous of me, not for what I had, but for who I was. Strong, she wrote, while I always felt weak. She said Derek had seen that weakness and exploited it, but that didn't excuse her for letting him. The last paragraph was for Emma directly. "You saved me," she wrote. "Not from jail or consequences, but from becoming someone even worse." Derek had plans to target other families, and I would have helped him. I would have destroyed more lives because I was too weak to say no, too desperate to feel special. You stopped that. You're 9 years old, and you're already the person I should have been. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that you're my hero. Emma folded the letter carefully, put it in her desk drawer. She didn't respond, didn't talk about it, just filed it away like evidence in a closed case. But that night she asked me a question that showed how deeply she'd been thinking. "Mom, do you think people can really change? Not just say they've changed or want to change, but actually become different people." I thought about Jessica, about all the promises she'd made over the years that she'd broken. But I also thought about the tone of her letter, the lack of excuses, the acceptance of consequences. Maybe I told Emma. Maybe with enough work and honesty and time. But change has to be proven, not just promised. And the person who was hurt gets to decide if and when to accept that change has happened. 6 months passed. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 5. The judge called him a predator who specifically targeted vulnerable women, using their emotional needs against them. Derek tried to make a statement about being a victim of circumstances, but the judge cut him off. 7 women's lives, disrupted families, destroyed trust, shattered. There were no circumstances that justified that. Jessica completed her community service ahead of schedule. The nonprofit director called me, said Jessica had been exceptional not just in hours but in dedication. She'd started a support group for women who'd been conned by romantic partners, shared her story as a cautionary tale, helped others recognize the red flags she'd ignored. It didn't erase what she'd done to us, but at least some good was coming from it. Emma, meanwhile, had thrown herself into her new advanced program. She learned about digital forensics, criminal psychology, white-collar crime investigation. Her teachers said she had an intuitive understanding of how criminals think, could spot patterns others missed. The FBI agent who'd worked our case stayed in touch, became an informal mentor, told Emma about a junior FBI program she could join in high school. One day Emma came home with a proposal. She wanted to create a presentation for schools about online safety and fraud prevention, specifically focused on how criminals use emotional manipulation. She'd already written the outline, created slides, even had statistics from the FBI website. But she wanted to include our story, which meant talking about Aunt Jessica publicly. I asked her why this was important to her. Because she said shame keeps victims quiet. And when victims stay quiet, criminals keep winning. If we tell our story, maybe some other family won't have to live it. Maybe some other kid won't lose their college fund. Maybe some other sister won't fall for the lies. Our pain can be someone else's protection, but only if we're brave enough to share it. So we did. Emma gave her presentation to 5th grade classes across the district. I stood in the back watching my little girl command the room, teaching kids to recognize manipulation tactics, showing them how to verify online identities, explaining that love shouldn't require you to hurt others. She never named Jessica directly, but she told the story honestly, including her own investigation and its results. After one presentation, a boy raised his hand and asked if she ever felt bad about getting her aunt in trouble. Emma thought for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. "I didn't get her in trouble," she explained. "She got herself in trouble by making bad choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. That's not revenge or being mean. That's justice. And justice isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary." A year passed. The seasons changed, life moved forward. Marcus's construction business grew. I went back to school online, finally working toward that degree I'd abandoned. Emma entered 5th grade, top of her class, still working with Mr. Harrison on advanced projects. We'd repainted Emma's room, fixed the roof, even took a small vacation to the beach, things we could do now that our savings were slowly rebuilding. Jessica stayed away, respecting the no-contact order that was part of her probation. But I heard things through mutual acquaintances. She'd moved to a small apartment, gotten a job at a call center, was attending therapy twice a week. She'd cut her hair short, stopped wearing makeup, seemed to be stripping away the layers of pretense that Derek had encouraged. People said she looked older, but somehow more at peace. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I saw her. She was at the far end of the cereal aisle, reaching for a box of the generic brand we'd eaten as kids when money was tight. She looked up, our eyes met, and time stopped. She didn't approach, didn't smile, just nodded slightly, acknowledging me without assuming welcome. I nodded back then, turned and walked away. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. They just become reminders of where not to walk. It's been 18 months now since that morning I discovered our accounts empty. The seasons have turned twice, carrying us forward, whether we wanted to move or not. Emma is 11 now, taller, more confident, still brilliant, but somehow softer too. The hard edges that appeared during her investigation have smoothed through, the wisdom remains. She still works with Mr. Harrison, still exchanges emails with Detective Morgan, still dreams of joining the FBI one day. The financial recovery is complete, at least on paper. Insurance covered some losses, Derek's assets were liquidated to pay restitution, and we've rebuilt most of our savings through careful budgeting and Marcus taking on extra projects. Emma's college fund is growing again, though now it's in a trust that requires 2 signatures and a lawyer's approval for any withdrawals. We learned that lesson the hard way. But the emotional recovery that's ongoing. Trust once shattered, rebuilds slowly and never quite the same shape. I find myself checking account balances, obsessively changing passwords, weekly questioning kindnesses that once I would have accepted freely. Marcus says I'm harder now, not mean, but cautious, like someone who's touched fire and respects its burn. He's probably right. Emma seems to understand things about human nature that children shouldn't have to know. She reads people like books, spots lies in casual conversation, notices when someone's words don't match their actions. Her teacher says she's protective of younger kids, especially those from difficult families. She runs a lunchtime club teaching internet safety, has probably prevented more scams than we'll ever know about. Jessica's probation ended last month. The no-contact order lifted, though she hasn't reached out. I heard she moved to another state somewhere in the Midwest, starting fresh where nobody knows her story. She volunteers at a women's shelter someone told me works with victims of domestic abuse and financial exploitation. Maybe she really has changed. Maybe she's using her experience to help others. Maybe redemption is possible. But that's her journey, not mine. My journey is here in this house we've made secure again, with this family we've protected and strengthened. Every Sunday we still have dinner together, just the 3 of us now. Emma helps cook. Marcus tells terrible dad jokes, and I feel grateful for what we have instead of mourning what we lost. The empty chair at the table has become less noticeable over time. Sometimes Emma asks about her aunt. Not often, but occasionally, usually, when she's working on a case study for her advanced program. She wonders if Jessica ever thinks about us, if she regrets her choices, if she understands now what she threw away. I tell Emma the truth that I don't know, and I've stopped trying to figure it out. Some questions don't have answers, or at least not answers that satisfy. What I do know is this. My 9-year-old daughter faced down a crisis that would have broken many adults. She turned betrayal into justice pain, into purpose loss, into learning. She saved our family's finances, yes. But more importantly, she showed us that strength doesn't always come in the expected packages. Sometimes it's a little girl with an iPad and a sense of right and wrong that can't be shaken. The other day, Emma came home from school with an award from the district. Student of the Year. Not just for academics, but for character. During the ceremony, the principal told the story of the young detective who'd solved an interstate fraud case, who'd turned personal tragedy into community service, who'd shown that age doesn't determine capability. Parents applauded, teachers wiped tears, and Emma stood there poised and humble. Afterward in the car, she said something that captured everything about who she's become. Mom, awards are nice, but they're not why I did it. I did it because it was right. Because family protects family, even from themselves sometimes. And because I learned from you that love isn't just about feeling good. It's about doing good even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Marcus and I have talked about maybe having another child. Emma would love a sibling, she says, someone to protect and teach. But we're careful now, thoughtful about expanding our circle of trust. We've learned that family is both blessing and responsibility, that love requires boundaries, that sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who'd spill it without thinking twice. Yet we haven't become bitter. That's Emma's greatest gift to us, showing us how to seek justice without vengeance, how to protect ourselves without closing our hearts entirely. She reminds us daily that good still exists, that most people are trustworthy, that one betrayal doesn't poison all relationships. She's teaching us in her 11-year-old wisdom how to be vulnerable again, carefully but genuinely. Last week, Emma received a letter from one of Derek's other victims, Sarah, from Chicago. She'd finally gotten her money back through the restitution process, was rebuilding her life, had even started dating again. She thanked Emma for being brave enough to stop Derek for preventing who knows how many future victims. She ended with a line that Emma pinned to her bulletin board. You proved that heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear unicorn pajamas and do their homework at the kitchen table. That's the truth of it, really. Heroes aren't always who we expect. They're not always adults with authority and resources. Sometimes they're children who see clearly because their vision hasn't been clouded by years of compromise and rationalization. Sometimes they're 9-year-olds who understand that love means accountability, that family requires honesty, that justice is worth pursuing even when it's uncomfortable. I think about the moment this all started, standing in my kitchen, staring at those zeroed-out accounts, feeling like my world was ending. I couldn't have imagined then that my 4th grader would be the one to set things right. I couldn't have known that betrayal would become empowerment, that loss would become learning, that my baby girl would teach me more about strength than I'd ever taught her. But that's what happened. Emma saved us not just financially, but spiritually. She showed us that we're stronger than we knew, more capable than we believed, more resilient than we imagined. She proved that family isn't about blood or obligation or history. It's about choosing to stand up for each other, choosing to do right, even when it costs everything, choosing love that includes both tenderness and toughness. The story could end here with lessons learned and justice served. But life doesn't really end. It just keeps going, carrying us forward into whatever comes next. Emma is already investigating her next case, something about a school fundraiser that doesn't add up. Marcus is building a new workshop in our garage, finally pursuing his dream of custom furniture making. And me, I'm 3 semesters away from that degree, better late than never. Sometimes in quiet moments, I wonder what Jessica would think if she could see us now. Would she recognize the family she nearly destroyed, now stronger for having been tested? Would she understand that Emma's investigation was an act of love, not revenge? Would she realize that in trying to take everything she lost, the only things that actually mattered, I don't know. And I'm learning to be okay with not knowing. What I do know is that tomorrow, Emma will wake up, eat her breakfast, go to school, and continue becoming the remarkable person she's meant to be. She'll solve problems, help classmates make the world a little safer and more just. She'll come home and tell us about her day, and we'll listen with wonder at the person our daughter has become. We'll have dinner together, the three of us complete in our incompleteness. And if anyone ever asks me about the worst thing that ever happened to our family, I'll tell them it was also the best, because it revealed who we really are, what we're capable of, and how love can transform even betrayal into something powerful. I'll tell them about my daughter, the 9-year-old who saved us all, who taught us that sometimes the youngest among us carry the oldest wisdom, and that real family is forged not just in joy, but in how we handle each other's pain. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the worst packages. Sometimes heroes wear unicorn pajamas. And sometimes, just sometimes, a 9-year-old with an iPad and an unshakable sense of justice can take down a criminal enterprise and save her family's future. That's our story. That's our truth. And that's why, despite everything, I'm grateful for the journey that began with emptied accounts and a sister's betrayal. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? What would you have done if your own child showed such incredible courage and capability in your darkest hour? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart or reminded you of the importance of real family, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more stories of resilience, redemption, and the unexpected heroes among us. Share this with someone who needs to remember that strength comes in all sizes and that justice, though sometimes delayed, is always worth pursuing. Thank you for listening to our journey, and may you always have the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it means standing against those you love.